"Sir, the arena is closed," the security guard called out as he noticed someone on the court at 3:17 a.m. Frank Williams had been working night security at Paycom Center for 8 years, and he'd never seen anyone in the building this late. As he approached with his flashlight, he couldn't believe what he was seeing: Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, alone on the court, practicing the same shot over and over again in complete darkness. What Frank discovered that night would reveal the most closely guarded secret behind Shai's success, and change both of their lives forever. The date was January 15, 2024. Frank Williams was halfway through his routine 2 a.m. security sweep of Paycom Center when he noticed something that made him stop dead in his tracks. Light was emanating from the main court area, which should have been completely dark and empty at this hour. At 54 years old, Frank had seen everything during his 8 years as head of overnight security for the Thunder's home arena. Players occasionally forgot personal items and returned to retrieve them. Coaches sometimes came in early to review game film. Maintenance crews worked irregular schedules to keep the facility in perfect condition. But Frank had never encountered anyone on the actual court at 3 a.m., practicing basketball shots in what appeared to be complete solitude. As he made his way through the arena corridors, Frank's initial concern was about unauthorized access and potential security breaches. The Thunder organization took player safety and facility security extremely seriously, and any irregular activity needed to be investigated immediately. But as Frank approached the court entrance, he realized that the person he was observing wasn't an intruder. It was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the team's superstar, alone on the court with a single basketball, practicing the same shooting motion repeatedly. Frank's first instinct was to announce his presence and ask if everything was okay. Players sometimes dealt with personal stress or anxiety by seeking familiar environments, and Frank wanted to ensure that Shai felt safe and supported. "Mr. Gilgeous-Alexander," Frank called out from the tunnel entrance. "Everything all right out here?" Shai turned toward the voice, showing no surprise or embarrassment at being discovered. His expression was calm and focused, exactly the same demeanor he displayed during games. "Hi, Frank," Shai replied, apparently recognizing the security guard despite the unusual circumstances. "Sorry if I worried you. I couldn't sleep and I needed to work on something." Frank approached cautiously, still trying to understand what he was witnessing. Shai was dressed in workout clothes and appeared to have been practicing for some time, based on the sweat on his shirt and the systematic way he was moving through his shooting routine. "How did you get in?" Frank asked, more curious than concerned. "I didn't see any cars in the player parking area." Shai smiled slightly. "I walked here from my apartment. It's only about 2 miles and I needed the time to think." Frank looked around the empty arena, trying to process the surreal nature of the situation. The building that held 18,000 screaming fans during games was now completely silent except for the sound of a basketball bouncing and swishing through the net. But what happened next would reveal something about Shai's character that no interview or public appearance had ever captured. "Frank, since you're here, would you mind helping me with something?" Shai asked. "I'm working on a specific shot, and I could use someone to rebound for me." Frank was surprised by the request. In 8 years of security work, he had never been asked by a professional athlete to participate in their training. Most players barely acknowledge security staff beyond polite greetings. "I'm not sure that's appropriate," Frank replied. "I'm supposed to be working security, not playing basketball." Shai's response revealed a perspective on human connection that Frank had never encountered from someone of his stature and success. "Frank, you've been taking care of this building for 8 years. You know every corner, every sound, every detail that keeps this place safe for all of us. That's a kind of dedication that I respect. 5 minutes of rebounding isn't going to compromise your security responsibilities." Frank found himself agreeing, partially out of curiosity and partially because Shai's respectful approach made it impossible to refuse. But what Frank observed during those 5 minutes would provide him with insights into excellence that would change his entire approach to work and life. Shai wasn't just practicing random shots, he was working on one specific shooting scenario with methodical precision. A contested three-pointer from the left wing, the kind of shot that might come up once or twice in a crucial game situation. Frank watched as Shai took the same shot 50 consecutive times, making minor adjustments to his footwork, release point, and follow-through with each attempt. When he missed a shot, he would pause, analyze what had gone wrong, and incorporate that feedback into his next attempt. "Mr. Gilgeous-Alexander," Frank said after watching this routine for several minutes, "you made that shot at least 40 times out of 50. Why do you keep practicing it?" Shai's answer would become the foundation of Frank's new understanding of what separates good from great in any profession. "Frank, the difference between a good shooter and a great shooter isn't talent, it's consistency under pressure. In a real game, I might only get one opportunity to make this exact shot, and if I miss it, my team loses. So I practice it until it becomes automatic, regardless of the circumstances." Frank nodded, beginning to understand the level of preparation that created clutch performance in high-pressure situations. But what Shai said next would reveal the deeper philosophy that drove his approach to excellence. The same principle applies to your work, Frank. You walk through this building every night, checking the same doors, the same systems, the same security protocols. Most people would think that's boring or repetitive. But you understand something that a lot of people don't. Excellence comes from doing small things perfectly, every single time. Frank was stunned. In 8 years of security work, no one had ever articulated the importance of his job in those terms. Most people, including some Thunder employees, treated security guards as necessary but unimportant fixtures. However, what happened during the following weeks would demonstrate that Shai's 3 a.m. practice sessions weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a systematic approach to improvement that Frank had never witnessed before. Frank began paying closer attention to Shai's routines and habits, both because of personal curiosity and because understanding player patterns was part of his security responsibilities. What he discovered was remarkable. Shai arrived at the arena earlier than any other player, often by several hours. He stayed later than anyone else, frequently until well after midnight. His preparation was methodical and comprehensive, covering not just physical training but mental preparation, strategic analysis, and skill refinement. But most importantly, Shai's approach to improvement was humble and systematic, never assuming that his current level of performance was sufficient. During another late-night encounter, Frank asked Shai about his motivation for such extensive preparation. Mr. Gilgeous-Alexander, you're already one of the best players in the NBA. Why do you put in so much extra work? Shai's response revealed a mindset that Frank had never encountered in 8 years of observing successful athletes. Frank, being good enough to succeed today doesn't guarantee being good enough to succeed tomorrow. Every other player is working to get better, so if I'm not improving, I'm actually getting worse relative to the competition. Frank thought about his own approach to security work and realized that he had been coasting on experience and routine rather than continuously developing his skills and knowledge. But what happened next would provide Frank with an opportunity to apply Shai's improvement philosophy to his own professional development. Frank decided to approach his security responsibilities with the same systematic approach he had observed in Shai's basketball preparation. Instead of just walking through routine checks, he began studying building plans, learning about new security technologies, and developing more comprehensive patrol strategies. Within 2 months, Frank had identified several security vulnerabilities that had existed for years but had never been addressed. His recommendations led to significant improvements in arena safety protocols and earned him recognition from Thunder management. But the most meaningful change in Frank's life came from applying Shai's principle of continuous improvement to his personal goals. Frank had always wanted to complete his college degree, but had convinced himself that at 54 years old, he was too old to return to school. Watching Shai's commitment to improvement regardless of his current success level inspired Frank to reconsider that assumption. However, what happened when Frank told Shai about his educational goals would demonstrate the depth of character that made the young superstar truly special. During another late-night encounter at the arena, Frank mentioned to Shai that he had enrolled in community college classes to work toward completing his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. "That's incredible, Frank," Shai said with genuine enthusiasm. "What made you decide to go back to school?" Frank explained how watching Shai's approach to continuous improvement had inspired him to stop making excuses about his age and start working toward goals he had abandoned years earlier. Shai's response was immediate and heartfelt. "Frank, if there's anything I can do to support your education, tutoring resources, study spaces, whatever you need, just let me know. Excellence deserves to be supported wherever it's found." But what Shai did next went far beyond verbal encouragement. Without Frank's knowledge, Shai contacted the community college's financial aid office and anonymously paid Frank's tuition for the entire degree program. Frank only discovered this when the college called to inform him that his account balance had been paid in full by an anonymous donor. When Frank confronted Shai about the tuition payment, the young superstar's response revealed the values that truly drove his success. "Frank, you've been protecting this building and everyone in it for 8 years. You've shown me more respect and professionalism than I have any right to expect. Investing in your education isn't charity, it's recognizing excellence and character that deserve to be supported." But perhaps the most profound impact of Frank's relationship with Shai came from understanding how greatness in any field requires the same fundamental principles. Frank began sharing Shai's improvement philosophy with other arena employees, and the results were remarkable. Maintenance staff began identifying facility improvements that saved the organization thousands of dollars. Concession workers developed customer service approaches that significantly increased fan satisfaction scores. The Thunder organization noticed these improvements and asked Frank to lead training programs for all arena staff, sharing the principles he had learned from observing Shai's approach to excellence. During one of these training sessions, Frank explained the connection between Shai's basketball preparation and professional excellence in any field. "Mr. Gilgeous-Alexander taught me that excellence isn't about being perfect, It's about being consistently committed to improvement. Whether you're shooting basketballs, checking security systems, or serving customers, the same principles apply. Preparation, attention to detail, and never being satisfied with good enough. But what happened during the Thunder's championship run would provide Frank with the ultimate validation of the lessons he had learned. Throughout the playoffs, Frank watched as Shai's systematic preparation paid off in clutch performances that seemed effortless to casual observers. But Frank knew the thousands of hours of practice that had created those effortless moments. During Game 7 of the NBA Finals, when Shai hit the championship-winning shot, Frank was working security in the tunnel near the court. As confetti fell and the arena erupted in celebration, Shai found Frank in the chaos and gave him a hug that cameras caught but couldn't explain. "Frank, this championship belongs to everyone who believed in doing things the right way," Shai said over the crowd noise. "Thank you for showing me that excellence and character exist in every corner of this organization." After the celebration ended and the arena was finally empty, Frank found himself alone on the court where he had first discovered Shai practicing at 3 a.m. He thought about how much his life had changed because of that chance encounter and the lessons about excellence that had followed. But the story was far from over. Frank completed his bachelor's degree with a 3.8 GPA and was promoted to Director of Arena Security for the Thunder organization. He implemented security protocols that became models for NBA facilities across the league. More importantly, Frank became a mentor for other arena employees, sharing the improvement philosophy he had learned from Shai and helping dozens of workers advance their careers and personal goals. During Frank's graduation ceremony, he received a surprise that brought tears to his eyes. Shai, despite being in the middle of playoff preparation, attended the ceremony and presented Frank with a basketball signed with a message. To Frank, proof that excellence has no age limit. "Thank you for teaching me that greatness is about character, not just talent." As Frank looked out at the audience of family, friends, and Thunder colleagues who had gathered to celebrate his achievement, he realized that discovering Shai's secret had led to discovering his own potential for growth and impact. 2 years later, Frank published a book titled The 3 a.m. Principle: What a Security Guard Learned About Excellence from an NBA Superstar. The book became a bestseller and established Frank as a sought-after speaker on leadership and personal development. But during every speaking engagement, Frank made sure to emphasize the most important lesson from his experience: that excellence can be found anywhere, and that the willingness to learn from others, regardless of age or profession, is what creates transformation. The security guard who had discovered Shai's secret learned that the most important discoveries are often about ourselves, our potential for growth, our capacity for learning, and our ability to apply principles of excellence to every area of life. And in Oklahoma City, where a championship banner hung from the rafters of an arena that Frank continued to protect, they understood that greatness is often built through quiet moments of dedication that no one sees, shared between people who recognize excellence and character wherever they find it. Frank Williams had started his encounter with Shai as a security guard doing his job. He ended it as a college graduate, organizational leader, and published author who had learned that the distance between where you are and where you want to be is often measured not in years or talent, but in willingness to learn from anyone who demonstrates true excellence.